Hello everyone. I am Varun Agarwal, Senior Associate Editor at ETCIO, and I welcome you all to another webinar organized by ETCIO on behalf of Automation Anywhere on the topic role of digital workforce in BFSI. Before we begin, there are a couple of housekeeping announcements. First, the webinar will be about an hour, and in between we will have a few opinion poll questions. Excuse me. We request you to answer those. Secondly, feel free to post your questions to our speakers. You can post them in a chat window. Now, without further delay, let me introduce you to the eminent speakers we have today, who will share the success stories and expertise in RPA and intelligent automation. Our first speaker of the day is Kaizad Hiramanik. Hi, Kaizad. So Kaizad is the Chief for Operations and Customer Experience at Bajaj Allianz Life Insurance Company. Our second speaker of the day is Yatish Shiv Prasad. Hi, Yatish.
Hello.
So Yatish is the Director and Head for Business Solutions Center at Society General Global Solutions Center. And we also have with us Sumit Pathak. Hi, Sumit.
Hi, guys. How are you?
So Sumit is the digital workforce evangelist from Automation Anywhere, and he'll be moderating the Fireside Chat today. A very warm welcome, speakers. So we'll begin with our first speaker of the day, Kaizad Hiramanik. Kaizad, welcome to the session. I request you to please start your presentation now.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much, Varun, and thank you, Sumit. And a very good afternoon to everybody. It's a real pleasure to be here and to speak to this gathering of professionals who are all actually stuck in the same situation that we all are. Basically, this situation is actually a dream come true for an operations practitioner who only plans BCPs on paper but never really gets to execute them. So this, in my opinion, is a great inflection point for all of us in terms of actually executing all those scenarios that we always envisage but never really encounter. So, without further ado, I'll just quickly run you through my presentation. I have a couple of slides in terms of thoughts, and I thought I'd start with a very interesting slide on research that was done, and typically people tend to diss research as this is somebody's figment of imagination or some khayali pulao that somebody's cooking without really having any clue of the real world. But if you look at some of these research vignettes or nuggets, think about it this way. It says here that by 2020, 25% of customer options will be run by chatbots. Today, if you think about it, if you've outsourced your services, most of your people are locked out of premises, and work from home solutions, especially in high intensity transactions, especially over video or voice, aren't really working the way that people envisaged it. So chatbots today, and automated IVRs are ruling the roost when it comes to customer service and customer resolution. And I'll talk a little bit more about it in my subsequent slides as well in terms of what we are experiencing. Another very interesting thing: if you can't get through to a call center agent, what do? You send an email, right? So if you see point 4, it says email is the most used channel, and it's going to continue that way. And yes, today, because customers aren't able to get through to a physical human being, or they're not able to get complete answers from your chatbots, they are still resorting to plain old-fashioned email. So that's not gone out of fashion. And if you think about it, even today in the Air Force circles, they still use Morse code. In Army circles, when all communication goes down, they're still using the good old Morse code, which was invented over 100 years ago. So, never diss the old technology, but you never know when it comes back into use. And the last one, most 43% of millennials contact customer service from a mobile device. I'm sure all of us carry smartphones, and it's not just restricted to the upper echelons of society, because today even your driver and your dhobi is carrying a smartphone, and he's equally hooked onto WhatsApp and lots of other applications like TikTok, etc. So again, I mean, the digital perspective and is all pervasive across all socioeconomic categories in society. And finally, 63% of customers are satisfied getting service from a chatbot. So the aim of any service provider today, even if he does provide digital service, is to digitize the physical, but at the same time never forget to humanize the digital. So how do you, for example, work on a failed utterance, or how do you, service recover of a dropped conversation? These are things that people need to think about. We have some answers to that, so I'll talk about it in the coming slides. So if you were to look at our lives 20 days ago, and 20 days is not that long ago, I mean, this is what we were used to, right? I mean, we were used to going to a nice physical office. You were used to saying good morning to your people, sharing a cup of coffee, working within secure servers and firewalls. Your partners, your vendors were all connected. You could access them at the click of a button. Your customers could access you across multiple channels. Some of those channels today don't operate at full capacity. Your applications were completely integrated. You had system, dashboard, productivity tracking. All that's out of the window because everybody's out of home, working out of home, and they don't have access to those core applications in many cases. So this is what we are all experiencing, right? This is our life as of today. No offices, forced work from home. Staff is unable to connect, so you can't really monitor productivity. A lot of people, and let me be quite honest, in our line of business, a lot of people are actually considering this as a paid vacation. So we obviously have a lot to think about in terms of the fact that we're still running a multi-million-dollar organization without full staffing. So it's food for thought for many of us. Similarly, home and public internet connectivity. So obviously, choke bandwidths. We are not operating on the luxury of large firewall protected bandwidths. Vendors are on home staffing, so a large proportion of them are redundant because none of them really. I mean, they're sweatshop workers, right? I mean, many of them aren't equipped with tablets and laptops. Many of them didn't even have internet at home. The SLAs today, which were sacrosanct in terms of managing outsourced agreements, are not manageable because you don't have the staffing. Many a times, last mile connectivity is a convenient excuse. So, how do you deal with that in the present scenario? And more so, if you think about us as an Indian organization, I mean, our financial year just ended on 31st of March, and we still, made it through quite comfortably. So again, it's food for thought in terms of how we were able to, foresee these kind of drop-offs and still manage to run the organization. Customers are contactable. Yes, I mean, all of us are sitting at home waiting for somebody to call us. I mean, I can clearly see click-throughs on our SMSs, on our voice blasts going up by 15-20% because people are bored out of the wits. I mean, they want to talk to somebody and they're very happy to actually look at who's communicating with you today. Whereas, I mean, if this came when you were sitting in an office, you would just have deleted it or hang the phone down on the blast. Similarly, app accesses, last mile slowness. I mean, typically, all IT professionals, they love the entire, data security and all kinds of security accesses, which really gets debunked when you're trying to access a corporate application from the slowness of a public data network. And finally, you cannot monitor things in real time. So how do you actually keep up with the fact that is your workforce really working? Is it really productive? Are they saying what they're doing? Are they doing what they're saying? Okay. So that being said, this is the new normal, and in many cases, this is going to be the next normal because whatever we are hearing in the marketplace, and we talk to analysts all over the country and all over the world, the next normal is going to actually shake up the way business models operate, especially in large, manpower-driven organizations. And see, in India, we typically have the luxury of, as an organization, we are free to actually, take calls on people. People don't have social security, but there are technicalities and challenges towards that. So the most important thing for all of us, especially in the Indian organizations, is that do we really need these armies of people that we are used to as a luxury? Do we need these large plush offices? Are we really up against the wall when it comes to conserving cash? And that is going to be the order of the day if you think about it, because business isn't going to just kickstart the minute the lockdown ends. And we are already hearing in the media that this lockdown is going to extend till the end of April. We never know. In certain hotspot states, it may even get further exacerbated. And that being said, you've already lost out 1 out of 12 months or 2 out of 12 months. And by the time you actually start working and the market kind of opens up, it's not going to kickstart. So you're going to take another 2 months to kickstart the economy. So which basically means that a third of the year is already gone, and you're not going to be achieving many of your ambitious growth plans. So the new normal for me, especially as a practitioner of running a large scale operation with over 1,000 people spread over 450 locations in the subcontinent, is one of the things that we did very quickly was faster policy making to unencumber process control. So very quick changes in delegations of authority, in the empowerment of people on the ground to take decisions, lesser reliance on people, and creation of fungible teams. So typically, we have this obsession of subject matter experts. We were smart enough to create fungibility right from the beginning to ensure that if somebody is not able to log in or somebody has a problem, and today you really don't know who's going to test positive next. So who's that person, or who are the next three people in line who can take that person's role? So creation of a knowledgeable, fungible team is the responsibility of every manager, and especially in the future of organizations in this country. More power in the hands of the end users. I already talked about empowerment and upfronting decisions. The end of physical sweatshops. So okay, we have one more luxury, and India being the outsourcing capital of the world, we also rely on a lot of physical sweatshops who actually work day shifts, night shifts, and do a lot of the dirty work. Now, many of these guys were also caught napping, to be honest with you, at this point in time. And it has opened our eyes in terms of, who are the guys we can rely on, because they actually thought things through in the future. And those people who had absolutely no BCPs and just shut down. So choice of partners is going to be under a great deal of a spotlight. Lightning of office applications, yeah, it's going to be a lot more work for, those typical battery charger IT guys who believe that everybody has to log in with four IDs and 6 passwords. But considering the fact that last mile connectivity in this country is not great, we operate on choke bandwidth. This is a reality. And I'm sitting in Pune, but imagine the guy who's sitting in Jharkhand or in Assam and having connectivity through BSNL. So I mean, last mile connectivity is a challenge in the remote parts of this country. So how do we lighten the application and interface so the person can still work at 70-80% productivity? Movement to office automation, very important wake up clarion call for all of us, because eventually the reliance on people to do transactions is going to end, whether we like it or not. The reliance on people to take routine decisions is going to end, and which is where your AI layer on top of these kind of solutions comes in. So the future organization is not going to be reliant on a lot of people. It's not going to be reliant on large offices. It's not going to be reliant on secure networks. It is going to be exactly what we are experiencing and more. And in my opinion, this is truly the beginning of the gig economy in India, even for established professionals, because we can see that we are equally productive even sitting in the comfort of our homes, and we don't necessarily need to be in an office or in a meeting room and sipping tea and coffee and eating free cookies. Then we could be operating equally efficiently from the comfort of our homes on a public network. And finally, very importantly for our customers, just yesterday I was on a con call with, I actually, I'm the Guardian Mancom member for our state in Bihar. And, many people think Bihar is the back of the beyond, as far as professionals in this country is concerned. But it was interesting to note, even from the team over there, that the minute lockdown was announced, all of them very, very seamlessly switched to the digital applications. So there was no real impact in terms of policies being logged in, or documents being collected, or people being interviewed for medical underwriting, or even people servicing themselves over stuff like our bot support, our portal, or WhatsApp. So honestly speaking, this country is truly flexible when it comes to its choices to service itself. And a lot of these devils of we need this physical infrastructure and we need this brand presence is in our minds, rather than the fact that the customer really wants it. And this is again a wake up call in terms of the kind of infrastructure and capex costs that we incur. Do we really need all these? Okay, so these are very thought provoking questions on which we are all working on as an organization. And if I just take my last slide, what is the future of the new normal? So if you were to ask me, paper is going to end. I mean, we don't get morning newspapers, as you can already see, but you're still able to catch up with the news, right? I mean, you're getting PDFs and you're basically doing a lot of stuff on the PDFs. Similarly, a presenceless organization, today it really doesn't matter where you are. And therefore, this also brings into question, permanent employment, because If people are able to manage, one assignment from home, why can't they manage 2 or 3? I mean, it may actually be more lucrative for people to manage their time better, sitting from the comfort of their home, having a good quality Wi-Fi network, and actually being able to service multiple principles. So this is the new normal. Eventually, fungible, like I told you, fungible and empowered teams, very important. You can't really be relying on one subject matter expert anymore, because if that person's not around, then what do you do? Virtual customer engagement, we talked about it at length. The customer of today is not the same. I mean, think about 3 years ago when demonetization was launched. I mean, it gave birth to the rise of wallets, it gave birth to the rise of UPI. And if you think about it today, 1.2 billion transactions happen on UPI every month. So that is the kind of uptake that the Indian customer has really adapted to, without really worrying too much about, oh, I don't understand technology, or how do I access this, or is my money safe in my bank account, etc. Cognitive operations, yes, a lot of automation tools are going to be doing your work in terms of transaction processing, in terms of decision making, at least for the routine stuff. So exception management is going to be the order of the day in the near future. And finally, of course, this is a wake-up call for all those organizations that still believe that brick and mortar is the way to go forward. Today, a brick and mortar is not accessible. So that being said, the digital transformation, where you lighten your organization, you virtualize your organization, you contextualize your communication, and you personalize your communication. This is going to be the order of the day in terms of everything that we are going to be doing in the future. And this means less travel, less physical contact, more online engagements, more online relationships through video, through chat, etc. Less entertainment outside, less need to travel, buy an expensive car and be seen at a venue. So a lot of industries are going to be impacted by this new normal. And I thought I'd leave you with these thoughts and hand it back to Sumit.
Faizad. That was some food for thought. So we'll now finally go to our opinion poll. So here it is finally. So the question is right in front of you. I'll read it out for everyone's benefit. It's, which process in your finance organization do you feel can be immediately automated? Is it data management? Is it wealth and asset management? Is it accounts payable and receivable? Or is it compliance, KYC documentation? And finally, is it new account opening? Guys, what in your opinion would be the easiest to deploy initially?
If you were to ask me, honestly speaking, I think one needs to take a bite at the elephant from all directions. It is not just one thing. But if you were to ask me first priority, I would definitely say, how do you run the organization to continue to acquire customers, expand its presence and circle of influence through the online mediums? Of course, like I already told you, our customers today are already attuned to a lot of digital. So in fact, most Indian organizations are slightly behind the curve when it comes to understanding that their customers are a lot further ahead of them.
Right. So let's see what our audience have polled for. Can we have the results? So data management seems to be the first thing that people want to immediately automate. So with that, now I would request our second speaker, Yatish, to please go ahead with his presentation. Yatish, over to you now.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. So it's happy to be here on this webinar, sharing some insights about intelligent automation. It's a very interesting topic, whether we are in the situation or not, whether we are in a BAU or in a very adaptable mode or not. It becomes very important for a bank like ours, which has got nearly 150 years old history, to look at how we bridge the old way of doing things versus the new one. Kaza did speak about, how things are changing around us, how we have to look at things in a much broader perspective. So the change is right outside our doors. We don't have a choice but to accept it and adopt it to our organizations. With that bit of a context, let me just quickly look at some of the perspectives that we as a bank look at when we look at a profitability on our side. What hits the bottom line? So definitely, we are more focused on income. We are looking at always ways to how to increase our income and reduce our expenses. There are a lot of costs that we incur as of today, in terms of administration, in terms of infrastructure, the IT, and the overall transaction cost. When you're dealing with the end customer or a consumer, I will call so. There are a whole lot of cost elements that are embedded in the value chain when we are interacting with our consumers. So that is something that we always intend to bring down, because that hits a bottom line. And what is imperative in today's world is the volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and the ambiguity around us, for which there is always, a lot of focus given to the risk management practices, all the internal controls that we have to put in our organization to make sure that we are ready to be able to table any kind of eventuality. And happy to say that, looking at the conditions that we have in Europe today and all the banks, European banks today, and comparing ourselves there, if we weren't strong in our fundamentals, we wouldn't have tided, the eventuality that we are facing today. So it becomes imperative for us when we look at our own survival, when we want to look at how we have to bring in the new technologies into the old way of doing things. But when we switch a bit to the way a consumer would look at us, what becomes important for a consumer? Definitely, he's looking at ways to maximize his own profit. I mean, just spare me for the word his, because there's no gender bias here. I'm just taking a neutral stance. And the customer or the consumer is actually looking at how he can decrease the transaction cost whenever he's interacting with a financial institution like us. And when you put the consumer in a VUCA world, does it really matter to the consumer? Not really, because whatever is the case, there is always, I would say, an economic theory that is running in his mind to maximize the consumer's own benefit, whatever the situation is. So does it really matter for a consumer, whatever is the changes happening to the world? So as a bank, when I switch sides, we just need to be making sure that, we are at all times delivering the right quality of service that we have to deliver, whatever is the scenario, right? And the final most important aspect for a consumer is the experience of the transaction itself. What brings in a wow experience to the consumer? A lot of banks today, you'll see they have a digital transformation strategy. If you really look at banks worldwide, the last 2 years, there has been a sea change on the investments that they're trying to do on their digital transformation strategy. The reason is, at the end, if you're able to leave a consumer with a wow experience, there is a lot that the consumer will take away with him. And in return, you will see repeat orders, repeat transactions, repeat products that you can sell as a bank. And of course, a lot of, scaling up on your customer satisfaction scale. Which brings to the point that it's very clear that digital transformation is here to stay, and it is very key for us to maximize not only the consumer profitability, but also what is profitable to us as a bank. There are various levers on which you will be able to achieve a digital transformation. Some of the levers which we already see happening in the banks around us is intelligent automation. It's when I look at intelligent automation, there are many various terminologies that are used. Some of us call it as smart automation, some of it call it as hyper automation. Hyper automation, in fact, is a word that is used by Gartner heavily. We will get into what it means in a while. The other levers are, how you are able to move to cloud and increase not only the processing speed, but also the agility that brings in while deploying your solutions on cloud. And this same agility with which you can go back to the consumer and say, here is a product which I'm able to deliver in a very, very quick time span. It also becomes very imperative while you're doing digital transformation. Security becomes a very, very key aspect. Especially the cyber security. We have seen a lot around us, in terms of phishing, social engineering, etc. it becomes a key factor for us to ensure that the transaction channels that we have with our consumers is extremely secure. Recent times, we have also seen how to integrate Internet of Things, wearables into our scenario, in the banking scenario. And there is another important and a very interesting concept which is opening up these days. And there are some banks who have already taken lead is open banking. You know, how you as a bank can open APIs for others to consume so that the delivery of the service to a consumer is faster. So to just bucket all of these concepts, you know, intelligent automation includes business process management. It includes all the concepts of AI artificial intelligence that we come across. It could be machine learning, it could be deep learning, it could be natural language processing, visual recognition, etc. It could be all the aspects around, you know, the OCRs, which gets integrated into the chain. And of course, what becomes very key is also the integration platforms. If you do not have the integration platforms, the solutions that you offer will be piecemeal, will be in pockets, and will not cover the entire business process chain that you would ideally want to cover. And that's where the maximum value is. So just to get a little bit around intelligent automation. So of course, I spoke about Gartner, identified as one of the top 20 strategic tech trends in 2020. When we look at intelligent automation, it's not just about, you know, putting an AI ML solution on one piece of a business process. We have to look at it in totality. And what it means is the way we define a process and the way we automate process becomes important. There are various stages of how you can look at the automation of process using intelligent automation. One is discovery of information, how you're going to assimilate it, analyze it, and based on this analysis, how you're able to design your intelligent automation solutions. And then you use it to measure, monitor, one, because you know you need to follow your own KPIs. But what is more important is the feedback mechanism that you will put it back to the information knowledge repository, and then you continue with the same cycle over and over again. So there are three stages that I've categorized the way you can look at the journey of the intelligent automation. The first one is mostly supervisory in nature, which is you know, the humans and the robots, I've put it as machines here on the slide, are able to interact with each other. But the supervisor, the human supervisor, is the one who will oversee a lot of actions done by the robot. And here I would say the level of automation that you can achieve is nearly 10 to 50% at various stages of automation. Then comes the hybrid model. I would say here there is a human intervention, but it is mostly at a periodic level or an intermittent level. And a lot of these processes happen at the background. Here, you can achieve anywhere between 50 to 80% in this particular model, and I would call it as hybrid. The last model, which is the one which everybody speaks about it now, is a hyper automation model. And in this, the supervision is extremely minimal, and you have a lot of processes which are self-run. And this is where artificial intelligence is used heavily, because then you will allow machines to learn by itself and to be able to do things which humans are able to do as of today. I wouldn't say, you know, to my knowledge and all the research that has been done and the case studies that I've studied, I haven't come across a case which says that we are 100% fully there as hyper automation. And that's why I put here on the slide that if you're able to achieve greater than 80% of your automation, you know, we are there in terms of being hyper automated. Some of the process which, if you take our context as a banking context, which becomes important, where you can apply intelligent automation. So there are two views that you can have: a view from a consumer point of view, because you know that's where you will see added benefit and a quick win. And then there is a view from the bank's perspective, because you know bank has to run a lot of background processes, right? From a customer point of view, you know, it's very simple, very straightforward. all the processes around creation of accounts, maintenance of accounts, monitoring of the accounts in terms of passbook, reports that you get in terms of automated statements is a very clear, straightforward case of automation. Where intelligence comes a bit is when you have to report a suspicious activity in your transactions. Many of us are aware that today, when you do a high value transaction, there's a relationship manager who's giving you a call, or there is a call coming from a call center to check and validate whether you have done the transaction. And the more you give a particular insight to this kind of call center who's giving you a call, the more it goes to the knowledge bank of the machine, which will realize that the transaction that you're doing, which is a high value transaction, is in your normal course or not. And this improves the way a suspicious activity is reported. We have seen another use case from a consumer point of view where your portfolio is being analyzed based on all the market watch that the machine does for you. There is a lot of tools, screen scraping tools, web crawling tools, which will go out in the web to be able to pick up news that you would want to build intelligence around how you want to manage your portfolio. And basis your own preference, your own risk profile, your own appetite to take a position or a stance in the market, it will be able to precise or give inputs to you to make a move in the market for your portfolio. So this is something that we have seen coming up in the recent past. From a perspective of a bank, if you really look at it, the number of cases are immense. I have picked up here, things that is relevant for us as well. KYC is pretty straightforward case. You can apply RPA. It'll be able to do what a human is doing. And as Kazad was saying, a lot of processes where human resource is dependable at this point in time is the one where we can easily apply and realize benefit around it. Fraud detection, important from a compliance perspective, because these are the ones which will monitor the kind of transactions that are happening, not just on the positive cases, but also on the negative cases. And you will also be able to apply intelligent automation on a lot of anti-money laundering cases. Again, comes back to the high value transactions, but here the context is different. It is between the institutions, it is between a corporate client and the institution, and it is between two corporate clients where you have a transaction happening. Obvious case is procure to pay. We had the poll question going on, and I was very interested to see all the points listed out in the poll question. You see as a use case here. Procure to pay is a very straightforward case, because it's very mundane. You know the steps, what needs to be done. There are rules that are defined. So to apply intelligent automation, it becomes a straightforward case. What could be beneficial is to go one step ahead to really identify suspicious transactions done by a validator in the procure to pay chain, and then be able to take corrective action. Okay, in fact, if you're able to well apply artificial intelligence and machine learning techniques here, we will be able to also precise the way certain load is applied on the resources which are processing this procure to pay chain, and be able to optimize certain processes. Two other use cases which are very, very important is the reconciliation process. Go to any bank, any financial institution, the amount of reconciliation we do between anything to anything else is humongous. So it could be a reconciliation between front office to back office. It could be a reconciliation between a risk snapshot versus an accounting snapshot. It could be a reconciliation between your economic P&L and an accounting P&L. There are various use cases that you will find reconciliation here. And this is where you can really apply an intelligent robot or a machine which can study the pattern of how you will how we will be able to reconcile one, and then be able to apply the resolution techniques for the anomalies that you will find after the reconciliation. One last but not the least, which I put here is on the risk modeling. Very important, because today we as a bank are always exposed to market risk, or credit risk, or a liquidity risk. When you're looking at market risk or even a credit risk for that matter, it becomes imperative that you're able to build a model with a lot of scenarios which can tell you how well or how bad your bank can perform in an adverse scenario, right? Let's take an example which is happening now on the COVID scenario, how we are able to build an effective risk model which will tell you what will be your credit risk. And this model can really be built on the contribution of the intelligent automation robo. Overall, if I may put so, definitely intelligent automation is here to stay. There is a very good improvement in our operational efficiency, as good as 30% if you're able to hyper automate your process. Important aspect here is how we will decrease your operational risk, because it is done by machine. It is more reliable, more precise. The machine know what to do in a particular type of scenario. So invariably, you're able to reduce your operational risk. It will increase the agility and the turnaround time. And of course, there is an enhanced consumer experience. As Keza did mention, 60% you see, people are very happy, when they're interacting with the chatbot. And even for us, looking from a corporate client point of view, the customer experience is immense when the turnaround time is quicker. And the turnaround time is quicker because we are able to automate our process. And we are able to automate our process because we are able to put intelligent automation in place. So with this, I conclude my presentation. Happy to take questions later. Thank you.
Thanks, Yatish. So that was an insightful presentation. We could actually understand really well how RPA really works. So we'll quickly go to our next poll before we move to the fireside chat. Can we have the poll question, please? So the question is, please let us know your organization's RPA and intelligent automation journey as of now. So are you evaluating the technology? Are you planning or experimenting with it? Are you doing a pilot? Are you looking at scaling up the RPA setup, or have you not begun as of now? Do you have 30 seconds to go for that? So Yatish, as you were talking about RPA, where do you see most of the organizations within BFSI? Where would you plot them in the journey?
I think, I would say it is pretty high, because the last 1.5 years, I can tell you my own experience has been that we have dabbled with quite a lot of cases. And just to give you an example, for one of our security services use cases within Society General, we embarked upon our RPA mission in 2017, if I remember correctly. We had really 30 robots which were put in place. And today we have seen a very, very steep increase in our operational efficiency, which covers NAV calculation, management of asset and liability, order management, the flow integration itself, etc. And we have done it with automation anywhere, by the way. So today it is here to stay. We cannot deny, or we cannot say that we will not look into intelligent automation. And RPA, I would say, is just one component of it. But today, all the processes in the banking industry will definitely have no choice but to embark on it.
True that. So let's see what the results are. So yes, a lot of people seem to be planning and experimenting with it already. So great. Can we take one more poll now? So here's a quick poll. How would you like us to interact with you post the webinar? Do you want an advisory workshop? You want to develop use cases? Do you want to build a pilot or help scale automation? So please quickly vote on that. Now we'll quickly move to the fireside chat with our speakers. I request Kaizad, Yatish, and Sumit to please join us as we begin with the chat. Sumit, over to you.
Thank you, Varun. Am I audible? I'm having some issue with my headset. All
Yes,
good?
you're
You
on.
are. You are,
Yeah.
Sumit.
So first of all, thank you for all the viewers to dial in. I hope you all are doing well, keeping safe, and staying in high spirit. And what an insightful presentation indeed, both from Yatish and Kaizad. I think covering at a macro level how the industry is going through from the digitization, and from Kaizad yourself and Yatish certainly going a bit more deeper within the banking domain, how automation is embraced. And I'll just extend it from there, to what you spoke just before, Yatish, what you spoke uh, on the poll question. RPA is a part of it, and that's how in Automation Anywhere as well we define the digital workforce. It's a combination of RPA, machine learning, data analytics, and OCR, another different piece of technology which comes together to provide solution for for a particular problem. So keeping it very customer centric and just not looking at one particular process and building some bots around it. Like for example, we you did mention about KYC, and Kazat, KYC is equally applicable in insurance sector as well, right? So if we take eKYC, which is right from the front office to the back office, you can utilize the various different channels which comes about when you go through digital transformation, right? With different ways through which you can communicate with the customers, and eKYC is one example. So while it becomes seamless for the customers, it becomes really operationally very efficient for the organization as well, right? So from the front and back, you can harness the power of automation, you can harness the power of cloud, and you can have a quick turnaround time in getting the new customer. So it's a win-win situation all throughout, which leads to the next point. And I think we were discussing about this before the webinar started, right? And I think I did make a mention as well at a time while we were waiting on the first poll. And this is for you, Yatish, that while according to me, the transition is a function of intent, right? So transformation is function of intent. Now, the change in mindset is very much important for any transformation journey. Now, coming from a European bank, do you see that in current COVID situation? And Kaiser, you did mention it was sort of a godsend for you, right? From the Indian context, right? How are you seeing it, Ish? Has this new situation is helping or pushing rather the shift in the mindset to embrace more digitization within the bank, which otherwise would have been a bit more challenging, knowing that banks are always thinking in the worst case scenario perspective?
Okay, I can give a pretty much a good insight about very recent 2 week 3 week history to say how we have very quickly adapted. How world over people have adapted from a handshake to a namaste, Sumit. We have also tried to make sure that we become quickly digital. Let's take an example of how employees are to be onboarded or even offboarded at this point in time, right? So in a scenario of a lockdown, you're not encouraged to get employees to office. So how do you do it? So as a bank, what we have done is made the process completely virtual. And while I say this, it's happened in 2 weeks time, which
Wow.
otherwise will take a lot of time, a deliberation, and given the European context and a French context, it can actually take a lot of time, validation, etc., for make it to happen, right? So in 2 weeks time we are able to put a virtual process, do a virtual onboarding of the staff whom we have recruited, and also do a seamless exit process for employees who are going out of the organization. This is just to give you an example. There are many other companies in Asia Pac and specifically in China, for example, Deloitte or Beijing Hyundai Information Systems, etc., where given the COVID situation there, they have a bot which actually collects health information on a periodic basis just to monitor whether a person could be susceptible to the virus or not. Okay, and this
Yeah.
they've put a RPA process in place to monitor the health of all the workers. So this I would say is second example. And coming back to our own context in the banking, more and more we see a lot of teams in our head office in France to rely on India to be able to deliver all the solutions and all the services as much as possible, given the scenario and how we are able to bring in a very quick turnaround time to put some solutions in place.
That's great. So I'll come back to that. I got an extended question on that one, Yatish, but I'm getting a lot
Sure.
of flurry of questions here, and keep it as interactive as possible. Kazad, if you have any certain points to make, even the question has been asked to Yatish, please drop in because we only got like 13 or 14 minutes. You may overrun a bit, but I think why not, right? So next question is for you, Kazad, which I'm receiving from our audience. Uh, on your presentation saying agree, we Indians are a lot more adaptive but still afraid in taking decisions for new and upcoming tech and transformation unless there is no other choice. I think you did highlight that particular point. It's a sword dangling on our head and which has made us push. So is that always the case in terms of us to transform? Does it have to be carrot and a stick sort of a way to go for transformation, or we can be a bit more futuristic in our mindset?
See, this is a very, very good question because there is a meme which is floating around on WhatsApp as we speak, which says that who decided your digital transformation? Was it the CEO, the CIO, or COVID-19?
Good.
I would like to thank COVID-19. I think that it gets the award for actually triggering this entire revolution, and it is going to be a revolution, believe you me, because with cash conservation being the mantra and survival strategy being the mantra, I think a lot of Indian organizations at least do realize that those fancy growth plans are going to go out of the window at least for the next 12 to 18 months. So that being said, really investing in swanky of physical infrastructure or high paid executives and high flyers traveling business class, it makes a lot more sense to actually now invest in technology which is going to last you for the next 3 to 5 years and do a lot of the work that an army of people could do. And which is why I also made that point in terms of your choice of your outsourcing partner, because if your partner is still stuck in the 1940s in terms of employing armies of people to sit in a close quarter BPO and do transaction processing, they've got another thing coming. So in my opinion, the time is now to invest in emergent agile technologies which don't really cost too much. Work on a pay-as-you-go model, work on outcome-based pricing, and get moving. Because even from your poll questionnaire, if you realize, many people are either planning or experimenting. Luckily for us, we started this journey about a year and a half ago, and thanks to the lockdown, at least a lot of the purely manual processes where you needed a person to sit in an office and do extraction of data and mail it to somebody, all of that has gone out of the window, which is great because at least from my client's perspective, especially on my B2B side, I find that I'm not getting escalations, stating that, hey, I didn't get this report or I didn't get this statement, etc., because the bot is already doing that. And like Yatish mentioned, we also work with you very extensively in with automation anywhere, bots. And I can only see this going further and further, especially considering the fact that human to human contact is going to diminish over the next 12 to 18 months with social distancing. In fact, I was actually on a call with a US based analyst last evening, and he actually mentions that social norms themselves will be changing, considering the fact that people to people contact is going to reduce, and there is no better time than now to actually be front ending a lot of the stuff to the sales guy, rather than making him subject to the tyranny of the back office and creating a black box between what is said to the customer and what actually happens in the back office. So there are going to be no surprises because rules are going to be upfronted, decisions are going to be upfronted, and empowerment is going to be upfronted. And therefore, there is no better time than now to be investing in agile and emergent pay-as-you-go technologies which can do instant outcomes.
So just so that your comment on using automation pretty heavily, and Nitish, you mentioned that as well. So I spoke to a few of the industry leaders during this COVID lockdown period, and I said, are they using their bots in terms of BCP, because the entire quarter of the world is in the BCP lockdown, and a profound statement came from all the leaders suggesting that bots should not be used in a BCP scenario. Bots should be used to make organization more resilient. if they're resilient enough, then you don't have to worry about them. That takes the pressure off BCP, right? So why is that not happening? Is it that the way bots are being designed is just one point automation automating certain parts of the process, or it has to be entire value chain? Would like to know, a 1 minute view from both of you. How do you see utilizing automation post-COVID? Do you think it should be used more for BCP to make a BCP bit more watertight, or it should be more resilient? Yatish, 1 minute from you, and then Kaizad, one for you.
Sure. I think when we look at bots or even I will put it as intelligent automation because there are
Yeah,
many components to it. I
absolutely.
think
Yeah,
we should look at a larger picture. We are a GIC. We do a lot of back-end processes for our for our parent group, right? And there are areas where we can bring in efficiency in a very quick fashion. Definitely we have to look at those areas, and this is COVID or non-COVID scenario. Okay, so we have to bring in those processes to the table. We have to put in intelligent automation processes if there is a business case which makes a lot of sense. And if we are able to drive this efficiency, and this is also a point for us to prove with our own group entity, because today group entities, the way they look at us is not purely because of cost, not purely because of efficiency. They look at us for the value that we bring in to the overall organization. So it also contributes to that. And when we look at intelligent automation, my opinion is it has to be on the complete end-to-end process. Of
yeah,
course, when you're designing it for the end-to-end process, there are pieces where you can do it in a straightforward way, and there are pieces on which there is a bit of a manual intervention or a manual validation that is required. Keeping that aside, you have to look at the process end-to-end.
makes sense. Thank you. Kaizad, over
Yeah.
to you.
So from my perspective, I really like the point that Yatish makes in terms of intelligent automation. I think the whether you like it or not, this is going to be here to stay. However, I do get the point that businesses which are customer facing do need a human element to the entire business. So I mean, it's a very different thing to say that a bot is going to give a customer a telephonic medical examination versus an actual doctor which the customer can see and talk to in his apron, because that automatically raises the customer's ability to make self disclosures. But the point that Yatish makes is right. I think at least from the processes that do not face the customer, those should be automated intelligently such that it doesn't require an army of people doing it, because in any case, they're not really, the customer is paying for them, but it's not really adding any value to him. Okay.
Yeah.
So the point is that if you can actually segregate your organization into value added and non-value added transactions from a customer perspective, from a regulator perspective, from a shareholder perspective, from a distributor perspective, I think that gives you a great deal of perspective in terms of what you should be automating first and what you should be leaving in the hands of human beings.
Fair
So
enough. I think
that
we
is my
should,
view,
yeah.
and like I keep saying, the more you variabilize your costs of processing and transaction, the happier your organization, because then you don't become the first victim of the chopping block.
Yeah, fair enough. And I think I think one common point which comes out of both of your comments is that it has to be very value-centric automation. You just cannot look at piecemeal. And certainly, when we talk about automation, as I said, it's digital worker, which is combination of various technologies put together and just not RPA we are looking at. Guys, I'm getting flurry of questions. So I'm finding it. I'm looking at only relevant, which is applicable to all the audience. One of the very interesting questions which has come about is, I am hearing RPA as an active part of digital transformation. But when I discuss with customer, they talk about it. But when it comes to adoption, apart from some big enterprise, it is very low overall in Indian market. Now, Kaizad, you have been driving this, and Yatish, automation has scaled up in GIC as well. So a quick, again, 1 minute, because I've got just 4-5 minutes left. 1 minute, a quick takeaway or a tip on how to go about this. I know I'm just asking you to Gagar mein Sagar types, but give it a shot.
No worries. So my suggestion would be that look at very high volume transactions which are very routine in nature and require no real judgment or decision expertise, and pick them up for a lift and shift into intelligent automation straight away. Largely, these should be non-customer facing, because those are the ones that actually are the biggest time suck and the biggest operational burden on your shop.
Thank you. Yatish?
Yeah, on my side, I see when you look at RPA, it should not be looked as a tactical solution because the way it is treated, when you do an offer of RPA to any enterprise, they look at to solve a problem in a very tactical fashion and not a strategic one. So I think we should gradually move away from it. So when the RPA is brought about, it should be embedded, as I showed in my slide, very tightly with the BPM, the business process management, because that's where you make it intelligent, and
Yeah.
that's where you will be able to bring value on that process.
Fair enough. I think it's looking completely inside out, right? Rather than just looking at some part of it and going from there. One thing which you guys did mention about from the geographical context, right? So, Kazad, you are in the heart of India right now. The economic impact, Modi did mention that yesterday in the news that how the difference was between World War II, the post and pre-World War II world was different. Similarly, he said about COVID as well. So there is a direct impact for any policies which are driven in India on your business. But Yatish, for GIC, it is split between the two geographies, right? Now there could be that the lockdown will continue in India, but France may open up. Will become a bit more free. So that way, more volume will start to come through. In a situation like these, right? How do you respond? And again, coming from automation anyway, do you see that the digital worker comes to rescue in such situation? So would good to get some perspective on that.
Okay, so I'll take it first.
Yeah,
See, the way I see it is that this situation, typically, insurance, if you work in insurance, it's the surefire way of losing friends and family because nobody wants to deal with anybody working in insurance in this country. So, in my opinion, this situation is, again, in my opinion, a very, very positive one because people have now started seriously thinking about their mortality because COVID is a very, very democratic disease. It doesn't spare the rich, it doesn't spare the poor.
yeah.
So, everybody values his life. And therefore, my suggestion to everybody in the audience as well is that please start considering insurance very, very seriously as part of your investment portfolio. So I've done my sales pitch. Now,
I, I
my
was about to say that, Kaiza. You did well.
but the fact of the matter is that this is a wake up call in terms of the fact that the way insurance is sold, and see, typically people always say that insurance is sold, never bought. I think that's going to change, and with this becoming a pull for many customers who feel the need to cover their mortality and morbidity, incidences. I think the digital way is going to be even more. So, people like web aggregators, online advisors, people who can, do simulations over a web chat, etc., are going to be the real gainers because the intimacy of going to somebody's house on a Sunday and meeting his family and then pitching insurance to his wife and his children is going to go away. So we don't want
Yeah,
a stranger to come to the house today, right? We don't know who is been in touch with. So that being said, we would want to do a lot more of digital interactions and take calls basis what we see rather than what we hear. And so automation is going to play a huge part in that in terms of the entire sales and onboarding process, and of course the servicing process. Like I said, the customer is far ahead of the manufacturer, and he knows what he wants to see and how he can research it and get access to that information.
fair enough. Thank you, Kazat. Yatish?
Uh, in this scenario, what I would say is mostly there are two or three ways of looking at it. The immediate impact is how we are able to manage our infrastructure to be able to support our core banking operations. So this is where I feel there is a direct impact on the way digital workers could come into the scene. And secondly, the reliance that our parent is doing on the subsidiary here, the GIC here becomes all the more important. So they are looking to us to say how we are able to bring the value. I'll come back to the value part. So how we are able to bring the value, which are the areas that we can go faster. And when we think about faster, we think about an intelligent solution. So that's what we are doing it. But it goes in a time span, Sumit. Some things that we can do immediately and some things which will take time in the due course.
It's going in that direction because we have run over time. I'm just going to take last question. It's an
Sure.
interesting one, if that's okay, and then I'll pass it on to Varun. So it's for both of you. It says that can cognitive operation replace the need for supervisor? I'm just it's bit. Just let me read again. Can cognitive operation replace the need for supervisors needing to approve exceptions, and can be post facto review at the end of the day validation of action taken based on cognitive RPA? Very technical question, but I think the gist of it is that the activity which is done by the supervisor, can that be done by the bots, and any exceptions? And when I say bot, it is, the cognitive automation I'm talking about, and the exceptions then can be later taken by the supervisor. Kairat, you want to
So
give
I'll
it a
take
shot?
that, and
Yeah.
I'll actually lay reference to Yatish's point, where he actually showed a very nicely gradiented, your human plus machine, human, then the machine takes over, and then finally the machine does all the work. However, the way I see it is that, especially when we are dealing with human lives, I mean, every decision cannot be taken by a machine, and therefore certain degree and certain types of cases will still need human intervention. You cannot take the human completely away. But
Yeah.
I take the point of the person who's asked this question that yes, it will be purely on specialized and exceptional cases, whereas the general rule, basis your analytical scoring will be done by the machine.
Yeah, you have some patterns, and based on that, you'll have certain thresholds. It falls within the
That's
pattern.
right.
It can continue. Any
Clusters.
standard deviation can go
You do a
through
cluster
the
analysis and
exception
then take
handling.
those.
Yeah. Yatish,
Yeah, I,
or
I I
from a
think
bank,
if
so
you
very
ask,
sensitive.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'll come to that, by the way. So if you look at any processes, and if you look at a technical way of answering this question, I would say yes, you can do everything. Okay, but what becomes more important in a BFS domain is one, the regulation itself in many countries would state that there has to be somebody who's validating, if it is a very critical operation, somebody who's validating, and there should be an audit trail of somebody doing it. So there is definitely a manual intervention requested. Two or three other aspects that one needs to take care is, if an action is being done by a bot, then is it secure? Does it lead to any fraudulent activities? Does it lead to any other activities which could lead to hacking? What about the data confidentiality? Will the bot be able to operate on a data which is very, very confidential in nature?
Yeah.
And is it okay by any local regulation of that particular region? Becomes very important.
So does it mean that with now things with COVID, we are compelled to do things in new ways, right? Previously, the infosec and the auditors and compliance were quite strong in the way we used to do work from home, right? Based on data secrecy perspective. Now we don't have a choice, but we have to, right? Because otherwise the business will stop. Will that lead to a bit more adaptability of digital transformation, automation post-COVID era? And I promise this is the last question.
I take it, yes, indeed, because the way you have to operate in a scenario like that puts a lot of questions, not only onto us as a financial institution, but also on the regulator. you know as we speak, ECB, which is a European Central Bank, has taken a
Yeah.
decision to even postpone a couple of milestones for many of our regulatory projects, keeping in mind the COVID situation. So what it means to us as an organization is how we are able to deliver what we are able to deliver, still being working in a premise which is not at office, not in that particular eurozone, but being an offshore entity, etc. So that leads to an aspect of how we are able to access the data, encrypt the data or process the data, and be able to report the data. Okay, so it means all our P&L statements, all our compliance reports, all our risk reports, etc., will fall into this category. Of course, as I said before, intelligent bots could do many of these things, but there is a final step where our intervention would still be required to validate certain type of transactions.
Certainly.
Yeah, okay. So if you want my two bits of wisdom
Two
here,
minutes.
I think
Yes.
most control and regulatory functions are typically a couple of steps behind, because I actually got a call from the auditor on the 31st of March saying I want your cash balances on 1st of April, and I said, well, my branches have been closed for the last 10 days, so there's no cash, and he refused to believe me. So that
That's
being said, this is real life, right? And I think it's going to be wait and watch for a lot of these kind of control functions to see what what we cook out of a single egg, a basis which they will redo their norms of what is acceptable control or not. So I
yeah.
mean, only time will tell, because I don't think have adapted to the new normal as fast as business functions have.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. And the new normal is here. I think as we go through the new normal, we'll also build a new lexicon. The new words will start to come through. On that point, first of all, thanks a lot, Yatish and Kaiza. It was amazing and very interactive. I think we lost the track of time because we're enjoying, and I hope, and we got a lot of questions. So the audience were equally involved in it. So thank you for putting all the questions. And thank you for making the the interaction so interesting. So thank you for that, and over to you, Varun.
It's been a pleasure.
Thanks, Sumit. So before people start to step away, I would like to remind you that there's one more poll coming your way. So please take that poll. Can we have the poll now? So the poll is, do you see your organization onboarding more digital workers post COVID-19? And your options are yes, we need and see higher uptake of digital workers. Maybe there would be more acceptance of digital workers, and no, we do not envisage any change.
I
So
think
I'll give you
after,
another 30 seconds.
yeah, Varun, please go ahead. Yeah,
Yeah, go ahead.
no, no, I'm saying after
So I'm
this,
saying I'll give
yeah,
the audience 30 seconds to answer that. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
and I'm saying after this interaction, right, this insightful interaction, I believe there's few who would have got convinced that there may require higher uptake. Not talking from automation anywhere perspective, but the need to respond to such situations warrants that.
Well, it's a knowledge sharing session, so it's not just about automation
Yeah,
anywhere here.
yeah.
So I'm sure there's something that everyone will take back with them post the session. So thank you, speakers. Thank you so much for taking time out. Thanks, Yatish. Thanks, Kaizad. Thanks, Sumit. I'm equally grateful for all our attendees for being here with us today. We shall send you the recorded webinar within 24 hours. Stay connected for more such sessions and stay safe. Thank you.
Thank you all. Stay safe. Thank you.
Thank you.